So some more about young Cathbad. If you think about the place where young Cathbad lived, it was a place with many valleys. And in the valleys there were lots of different people, almost like they'd washed up on the shore, like driftwood. And some of them had rooted. And I talk about the place in another clip. But who did Cathbad grow up with? The people you grow up with are really important in shaping who you become. And of course, your family, they're your closest. And Cathbad's mum and dad, they were really important in the way he grew up. But in the house he grew up in, he also had an uncle and an aunt and his grandparents and lots of brothers and sisters and nephews and nieces, and well, it was a large family. So he had many people around him telling him what to do and inspiring him to do better. Probably like you. But those people, they mostly had the same ways as him. He also had friends. Now, Cathbad was interested in finding out about people who were different to him, finding out about lots of other ways that you could live, and hearing stories from far off lands. So he made sure he made friends with lots of people. Like his best friend, Eric. Eric's dad was from Norway. So you could say he was Norwegian. But he lived in the same place as Cathbad, and that was a place that was becoming called Scottish. So you could say that Eric was Scottish. But when they were young, they didn't care much about all of those sorts of things because, well, they were Eric and Cathbad, and they had families, and that's what was important. Also, what was important was going round to Eric's longhouse and hearing stories. All the stories of the Aesir, stories that had been brought in from the north. When they weren't listening to those stories, sometimes they would go around to Finn's house. Now, Finn's family had been in the area a lot longer, and Finn himself was called after a great Irish hero. Well, also, he was called Finn because he had white hair that was really fine. And there were many discussions, not arguments, between Finn and Eric over whether Harold Fairhair was a greater hero than Finn McCool. I'm not sure they ever sorted that out. Maybe you should find out the stories of them. But Eric and Finn, both, they were going to be warriors. None of them wanted to be a warrior more than Owen, though. Owen felt his ties to this land going right back into the ground. Owen's hero was Arthur. He'd been told stories of Arthur. He'd been told stories of Arthur, King of the Britons. And one day Owen's dream was to see the Old North restored again, and the greatness of the British to be brought to life. Well, there are lots of stories about that too, but I think Cathbad learned heroism really from Owen and from Arthur. But always with Arthur there were stories of Merlin. Finn called him Lalacan, but Lalacan, Merlin, a figure like this is going to have names that, well, so many different names, and none of them are going to quite describe him. And maybe that's where Cathbad learned a little of mystery. Nobility, perhaps, Cathbad learned from another friend. This friend was Aethelflaed. And Aethelflaed was, well, her family were relative newcomers, and they'd kind of come in with Northumbria and the kingdom there, and had been part of rebuilding Whithorn and making it great again, but their power was on the wane, and, well, some of Eric's relatives, distant relatives, who he didn't have such close ties to, had been attacking the kingdom of Northumbria quite a lot. So at the time when Cathbad was growing up, when there weren't wars being fought, then the Norwegians were friends. when there were wars being fought, then sometimes they were treated with a little bit of suspicion. And Norwegians, Danes, well, those words were used a lot interchangeably too. But mostly for Eric, Finn, Aethelflaed, and Owen, they had great summers where they would explore the streams, find the forests, go to the high shielings to graze cattle, and meet up at things, great assemblies in the thing place, Tinald, where the adults would all be talking and settling issues that they had and discussing how many cattle were going to be sold and what the correct price for a bale of cloth was. And Eric, Finn, Aethelflaed, and Owen, I mostly played Taffel, rolling dice and betting on pebbles, or looking out for fine treats that you could only find at great markets. So, that's an introduction to some of the people that Cathbad grew up with, and if you listen to the stories, you'll find out more about all their different stories that came from their worlds. If there's a story you would like me to tell, or if there's someone you've heard about from any of the span of history, then let me know. I'll have a look into it. And if it's a story that fits with my mind and the way I tell stories, I'll get around to recording it one day. And if it doesn't, then I'll thank you for the opportunity to expand my repertoire and expand the knowledge of things that I wouldn't go looking for otherwise.